traverses this long passageway here to J. And we read, when we get to J, an operating table with white sheets covering a body stands in the center of the room. Blue electricity crackles in several Tesla coils strewn about the place. A few large knife switches are attached to the walls. Tables filled with glassware, especially test tubes, beakers, flasks of bubbling and smoking colored liquid, distilling columns, condensers, burettes, and Bunsen burners complete this mad scientist's laboratory. 9 cages filled with die rats, one of them albino and the other 8 black, are stacked like a tic-tac-toe board. The white rat is in the center. The rats squeak when they see the party. At this point, you do a perception roll, and if you perceive, you will see that the body on the table is starting to move. And it looks like it's going to be a flesh golem coming at the party. As the party begins to attack the flesh golem, they see that their weapons pass right through it. This golem is nothing more than an illusion. The rats are the real threat. And so what we're dealing with here are magic rats, and they are a new monster that is available here at World of Atlas, and you can read about them here. And we have a leader of the magic rats, which is Whitey Whiskers, and that's the albino rat, and Whitey's actually a second-order mage and can cast Silent Image, which is how they created the golem, and Magic Missile, and also Scorching Ray, touch attack. It's going to be quite deadly for anybody. So you start up the combat, and one thing that's going to go to the adventure board and talk about this is, even though the room's kind of substantial at 20 by 20, I mean, that's probably the size of most classrooms. So you could easily have 4 people fight 9 dire rats in that. But, you know, with our rules and giving everything, for Pathfinder, giving everything a 5 by 5 kind of scenario, and we put a normal, so we're going to put 8 of the giant rat type things, and so very soon we are now filling up the thing, and we would have to stack, and that gets kind of cumbersome. So I like to just kind of keep the extras over here on the side when I'm doing that and using the adventure workbook. And then we're also going to have Whitey Whiskers here, which we'll give a special one. And Whitey, you can maybe even put up there. And so then you can have the combat. But really, you know, what we're dealing with is 25-pound rats. So you can kind of have 2 rats per square when you're thinking about that, and just keep the tokens over to the side. And Whitey can also be in there with those guys. So that's kind of a way to deal with the adventure board, is kind of keep them in reserve and as you're doing stuff. But these characters are now moving in to start a combat. They're first attacking this golem, but then they're caught by surprise by these characters, and the combat commences. So, summary of how the Party Genericus did is, well, Party Pip, we'll talk about them first because that was kind of easy. Party Pip went in and basically Grazel detected the illusion, realized the rats were the real threat, and so Claith was able to fire a color spray without getting a round of surprise. That color spray stunned everybody, and then Robert wound up critting Whitey Whiskers, and the rest was just mop up. One of the rats did get off a grease spell. That grease spell was like a 10 by 10 over here, and so the party was kind of slipping and sliding as they went to finish off the mop up. But basically, this encounter went fairly well for Party Pip. For Party Genericus, they came in and they did not have Grazzle with them, so they got surprised. And then the grease goes off, and Fighter winds up falling. They get hit by a barrage of the little magic missiles that magic rats fire. And Fighter also failed to save versus Charm, and so he wasn't in any. He was slipping and sliding, and not even part of the combat. Scout got hit hard. Fortunately, the Scorching Ray missed and blasted the wall behind him. And then Scout's a her. I keep forgetting. And then Cleric was. Mage was in trouble, and the Cleric just had to pull them all out. So there was a full-scale retreat from the grease, and they had to wait till the charm wore off. They pulled back here. The rats did not follow, but the rats did find cover. And so the next time in, they went in behind a color spray from the mage. They were saying, hey, we can color spray these things and mop them up, and thinking of them as dire rats mainly. But these guys had found cover, and so they were +4 to their save, and they also, magic rats have a pretty good will save. So it became a war of attrition after that, even though the grease was gone and the rat that could cast grease could no longer cast it. It became a war of attrition with the party having to fight all these things in cover. And they were going to lose. The party was going to lose, except Scout was the last one up. Everybody else was stabilized and down. I think there were 2 magic rats left. Whitey was down. But 2 magic rats left that were from cover firing. And Scout, she kicked over a table and was behind it, and she fired into these and got lucky and was able to actually kill the last 2 magic rats. And so the day was won. And so after you win the day, there's some potential for finding stuff in the room. And there's treasure. And Party Genericus, actually, Scout was actually able to pick the lock and got the 2 bone tubes out with the darkness and the acid arrow. The Party Pips... Autumn was not able to do that, and so they had to not get that, but then they were able to figure out that they had these potions, and identifies abound for the different both parties, and they were able to figure out what kind of potions they had. And Party Genericus had to use the potion of Cure Wounds right then. They had already used all their other potions of Cure Wounds. It was a very, very deadly encounter for them. And so they were weakened, and they had to rest. Party Pips also rest because they had kind of used up all their spell points in the encounter with the swarms, and then a little bit with the combination with wiping out the magic rats. And so then Autumn's daughter wound up being day 2 on her approach to filth fever, which was going to come in 3 days. So that's what happened to the party in the 2 parties when they took on Mapcode J.